This trace mineral is proven to reduce death and increase lifespan in humans, and it makes people happy and fights crime. Sorry, it reduces crime. And it also may reduce aging, and it appears naturally in water, so we know it's safe, costing in a supplement form less than $1 a week. Brian Johnson actually takes it, wrongly as you're gonna see. This trace mineral, you have it in your phone and electric car. It's called lithium. But after covering 35 years of its research, I don't take it. Today I'll tell you why. Because every medication, every supplement, every food, everything in life really hinges on risk versus benefit. And the risk-benefit determination depends. It varies person to person. Despite researching supplements over 20 years, I don't sell them. I don't have connection to any supplement company. This is the good thing about turning down every sponsor. I can look at the data of lithium objectively, and I'm very comfortable. I have no conflict of interest. I'm going to show you the research, and then we're going to discuss the steps that came out of this research. This time, the research looked directly into human brains after death and tested dozens of different metals in the brain. And this is what they found. Lithium. It has been consistently and significantly lowered in people with mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's. But association, of course, is not a cause, and the presence of lithium in the brain indeed strongly correlates with protection against Alzheimer's, but we cannot say yet if it's the lithium deficiency in the brain that causes Alzheimer's, or maybe it's Alzheimer's itself that depletes lithium. But the connection is striking. But the researchers didn't stop there. They provided mice with lithium orotate in a common form sold in supplements that is very available to you and me. And in this mice study, they have found 3 amazing things. The first one is very low lithium orotate, I'm going to tell you in a second how much, was sufficient to prevent and even reverse plaque in the brain, myelin markers, and also rescued memory. This is not just prevention, but actually reversal. This study suggests that lithium deficiency drives plaque formation in the brain, and you just need a tiny bit to prevent that completely. How tiny? That's the second discovery, the dose. A rough mouse to human scaling puts the lithium orotate about 0.03 milligrams per day of elemental lithium for a 70 kilo person. But this tiny amount was connected to the form, lithium orotate, which is the third discovery. The researchers found that Orotate worked better than Carbonate for removing and preventing plaque from the brain. This is supported by all studies where lithium Orotate showing 3 times more penetration into the brain in rats versus Carbonate. So you may wonder how lithium Orotate works to prevent the plaque or even reverse it like they showed in the study. This is the most likely explanation at this point. When taking lithium Orotate, some of this form stays intact and gets into the brain and protected from the entrapment by the plaque itself. And these low levels of lithium orotate are sufficient to inhibit an enzyme called JSK-beta, which leads to the activation of autophagy in the brain. What happens next, you may wonder? So what autophagy does, it removes protein garbage. And protein garbage is the essence of the plaque that contributes to Alzheimer's disease. Now, why is this exciting? Because the study covered both the mechanistic study on the brain of mice and human brains analysis. But it's also supported by human data in other studies where higher lithium in the water supply is associated with lower Alzheimer's rates. And even more exciting is that lithium orotate is accessible to anyone and it's very cheap. And actually the researchers, I checked that for you, had no conflict of interest, so nobody's interested in selling you lithium orotate for $2 a month to achieve this dose. All in all, this study puts this supplement, lithium orotate, as a very interesting insurance against a disease that medicine doesn't really know how to prevent in full, let alone reverse. And a disease that impacts not just the person but their entire family, causing massive amount of suffering that may be avoided. So the risk-reward ratio here is tremendous if indeed we find a way to take lithium orotate safely. So who should consider taking this supplement? There are 2 groups that may benefit the most from it. First, women over age 45. Up to menopause, women preserve more of their brain's performance compared to men. But then after menopause, the beta amyloids, which causes the plaque, begin to accumulate silently, and this deposit accumulation begins in mid-40s and 50s. And even if the symptoms of Alzheimer's would appear only in the late 60s or 70s. And this actually fits well into the rapid aging we have seen in women after menopause. Another group that may need this protection are men with single or 2 copies of a gene called ApoE4. These genes increase dramatically the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Now, why you still want to curb your enthusiasm? First, this is a mice study, and it was conducted with mice with genetic mutation for fast plaque accumulation. Now, mice, first of all, they don't have the human brains that we have, but now you put them on accelerated mode of plaque formation, all while humans, we develop plaque over many decades, so it's difficult to translate directly. Also, in humans, Alzheimer's is not just caused by plaque alone, but by multiple overlapping drivers, such as brain insulin resistance, blood-brain barrier breakdown, vascular damage, chronic inflammation, and mitochondrial failure all happens in the brain. And lastly, there is a huge unknown about the dose, because we don't have a complete data on long-term lithium orotate on human health. Yet most of the human data is actually low-dose lithium that comes from water, which is actually more similar to lithium carbonate. So what's the difference? Lithium carbonate flooding the system with free lithium ions, which can get trapped by plaques and may not even penetrate well into the brain. Lithium orotate, on the other hand, releases the lithium ions more slowly, and potentially more of the lithium reaches the brain. And bear in mind that a minuscule amount of lithium orotate achieve the results. So based on this data, we may speculate that you probably need even lower amounts than what appears in the water supply. So we don't know the ideal dose at this point. Because remember, it's not just the brain, it's our entire health. But overall, there is a huge room for excitement for Alzheimer's protection, which brings us to the big picture of lithium supplementation. So this is what the data says today. For Alzheimer's prevention as insurance, it's very exciting, but we still don't know the correct dose and long-term side effects. We have psychiatric uses. This is not my specialty. And third, mood stability. Low-dose lithium looks very promising for that. There is a strong data in humans, and actually I'm testing that right now on my body as I check the aging tests. For slowing down aging, living longer, and longevity, I'm not convinced yet. I need more data. I will test that and run brain aging tests after 4 months of cycled supplementation. There is an aging mystery with lithium. Mostly is about targeting mental health, possibly the brain, and also longevity in general. Maybe it's going to help us live longer. So Brian Johnson has been taking lithium for over a year now. He has been taking 1 milligram per day. He takes it in the morning. And the reason why he takes that is part of a neurological protection. And one of the mechanisms that lithium may achieve that, we're going to discuss that today, is possibly via the activation of autophagy in the brain. Why is autophagy important? Because if there is like one mechanism extends lifespan in humans, in life in general, is autophagy, because if you look at your genes, your DNA, in essence, the DNA, all instructions in the DNA is just to create protein. So in essence, the DNA is a communication on how to form the structure of your body from protein. And if you want to live longer and stay young, and you want to keep the structure younger, you need to rejuvenate the protein. And the best mechanism for that is autophagy. Autophagy directly recycles damaged protein and opens the door to rejuvenation with new structure, with new protein. So anything that targets autophagy is going to make you live longer, and it's one of the challenges we have in the longevity field is targeting the brain. Anybody who came from the pharmaceutical industry will tell you that it's very difficult even to get any drugs into the brain. And if lithium can really target the brain for aging, it's going to be very interesting. For us, maybe it could complement something we don't have. Everything that slows down aging in the brain, you won't have a perfect animal studies, because humans, we have more cognitive issues because we have more evolved brain and we also live longer. So let's start from the human studies, and we're going to see the effect of low-dose lithium in water on human risk of death. So all these studies are just association studies. They're not a cause, meaning that we cannot really connect the presence of lithium in the water to the direct cause of death, but we're going to try to figure it out today, because if we can find the link, it will help us to make a decision about the supplement. Now, there are multiple studies that showed that drinking water with lithium long-term reduced human mortality. I'm going to cover 2 of these today. The first one was in 2011 in Japan. They covered over 1.2 million people in the study, and they found that regions with higher lithium levels in drinking water had significantly lower all-cause mortality. That begs the question why this is the case. Maybe that's the secret of the Japanese, just drink water with lithium. Another very interesting study, again, also humans. These are not animals, just humans like us. This is from Texas. They took all the 232 counties in Texas, and they found a significant inverse correlation between tap water lithium concentration, all-cause mortality. There was almost 20% relationship, which is pretty significant. In other words, more lithium in the water supply, less death in Texas specifically. So that's very interesting. But all in all, they found that Texas has a higher of lithium. And even more interesting, in many of the countries I've seen, when there was a bit lower dose of lithium in the water, there was lesser correlation or no correlation. But these were like the two biggest studies about mortality. So these suggest that maybe we're going to gain some potential years by adding low-dose lithium to the water we drink. And it begs the question, what would be the effect of lithium on human mortality? And the question is, would it actually affect aging and longevity? What would be the amount in a supplement form that would imitate the doses they have in Japan and in Texas? We checked all the doses as well. So we're going to give you the exact dose that imitate the natural occurrence in water supply into a supplement that you can take if this is the path that you want to go. And the translation of the best results were between 0.05 milligrams per day to 0.3 milligrams per day. So this is very low doses. Just to compare that, life extension, for example, they sell 1 milligram of lithium. When we speak about a supplement, it's very important to separate between the weight of the compound to specifically lithium, because lithium is connected to other things in the capsule, and you only want to speak about the lithium. All the numbers I spoke about are just quote-unquote elemental lithium. So we are speaking about 0.05 milligrams to 0.3 milligrams per day in the water supply that achieve the results I mentioned. Of course, women need a bit less because they weigh less. But still, for me, this is not enough. We need to know the mechanism, and we need to know, is it a really cause or association? Or maybe there was a different link here. That would be very interesting before we just jump onto the bandwagon. And then it brings us to the animal studies. I'm going to cover quickly the animal studies. The first studies was in 2008. They found that worms on a moderate dose, much higher doses as we mentioned before, had a 30% up to 45% increase in life extension. That's very interesting, very promising. It supposedly corroborates what we have seen with the human studies. But it's very important to know that worms are the worst model for longevity because they are about 600 million years away from evolutionary distance from humans. So the way we want to look at animal data is how far away they are from us from evolutionary perspective. Monkeys, of course, the closest. Worms are very, very as farther as possible, them and yeast. So they are 600 million years away from us. Another study found that fruit flies are closer to us, and they lived about 16% longer. The story looks very interesting. What exactly lithium does? But then there was another study in 2015 that fruit flies showed no lifespan extension. Very interesting that lithium in this study actually removed all the longevity benefits female have over male. Almost all animals, the female live longer than male. According to the study, we demonstrated that chronic treatment with low to moderate dose of lithium chloride does not extend lifespan in fruit flies. And we're adding that the drug abolished the female lifespan advantages. So that's one of those things that you kind of wonder, until we figure out exactly how it works, maybe if it offset benefits for female, what's the cause of that? But all of that brings us to the mice study. This is the best longevity study I have read on lithium for longevity. Mice are closer to us from evolutionary perspective, about 80, 90 million years ago. They're also mammals. The biggest disadvantage of mice, they died primarily from cancer, not from Alzheimer's like us, and they don't have the fully developed brain. So if lithium would reduce aging in the brain, mice would not really benefit as much as us. And in this study, lifespan was not extended in mice. And the interesting thing, they tried different doses because I would say probably they didn't use the right dose, but it wasn't the dose issue. They tried different doses, it didn't work. They did not live longer. And they also gave them in different ages, both in young adulthood, also midlife, age 40. So it wasn't an age issue, it wasn't a dose issue. I'm quoting from the study, this is from 2021, not far away ago. I'm quoting, lithium can mildly increase health during aging, but not lifespan in mice. In several doses did not extend lifespan, but they found it mildly improved motor performance, body weight composition, glucose tolerance, and kidney pathology during aging in males. That's very interesting because motor performance suggests an impact on the nerves, and kidney pathology also very interesting because, as I'm going to show you, one of the mechanisms lithium works by targeting a mechanism that's dominant in the kidneys and in the brain. So it could be the extended lifespan. It has zero effect on cancer, but maybe it helps with the brain and the kidneys as well. Another interesting question we have: the ITP is a lifespan lab network. It is subsidized by the US government, the ITP, and they decide that lithium is not interesting to them. This is very interesting because that's another data point that we have to consider. The fact that it's not even in the roster shows how weak the lifespan data is. So we have here a very interesting mystery, which is how come lithium does not increase lifespan in lab mammals? Because even with the fruit flies, it was inconsistent, and with the best mammal study, it did not have any effect, while consistently reduces mortality in multiple human epidemiological studies in Japan and Texas. So we are about to figure out this mystery, and the question is why the increased lifespan in humans would not translate to animals. One could be the reduction in Alzheimer's disease, which is it's the fourth leading cause after age 55. Specifically in women, so maybe that could be the reason. Maybe the animals don't die from Alzheimer's. Another interesting killer that could dramatically affect lifespan is young people killing one another or committing suicide. When a person commits suicide, it can significantly lower the average lifespan of the population because it can happen at any age, unlike Alzheimer's or diabetes or cardiovascular disease that usually tend to happen over age 55, 60, and the older we are, the more frequent the disease is. If we speak about suicide or homicide, then we are talking about something that can have a dramatic impact on the lifespan from a statistical effect, because the effect on the average is dramatic. Make sense? The younger the person is, it's going to pull the entire population down, the average. So it is possible that the reduction in mortality seen in humans less has to do with actually slowing down aging, but more has to do with improving mental balance and maybe reducing depression and also accidental death because of mental imbalance. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go back to the human studies and see whether lithium in the water is associated with fewer suicide and less crime in general. So in Austria, they measured lithium concentration in water in 99 districts, and they found inverse, meaning the opposite, association between local lithium and suicide mortality, even after adjusting for socioeconomic factors. So it wasn't just the wealthier or had better healthcare, but actually it's the lithium isolated directly affect the mortality from suicide. In 2017 in Lithuania, they found exactly the same result, lower suicide in areas with more lithium. But let's go to Texas. I actually covered studies from 1978 to 1987. They found, this is way before the study I showed you in 2018. They did try to see the impact of lithium in the water and suicide specifically, and found with lower lithium, significantly higher suicide and homicide rate than countries with moderate lithium. In 2013 in Texas, again, they've done the same study. This is before the study in 2018. I'm quoting, lithium levels in public water supply were negatively associated with suicide rates in most statistical analyses. What about Japan? Remember the study in Japan? And they found indeed that fewer suicide in areas with more lithium in the water. And the interesting thing is that Japan and Texas, they stand out because they showed the largest mortality reduction associated with trace lithium in water, likely due to the nature of preventable death, those populations. What about countries with lower suicide rate and higher lithium? Maybe these people still live longer, and like Denmark, for example, and they showed that there was a psychological benefit, but not directly to do with aging, so no reduction in death in those countries. So far, we have a picture that lithium doesn't necessarily slow the aging rate, but it does appear to have a positive effect on mental health in the population. And this could be translated to fewer suicide and homicides and other incidental death causes, including even car accidents due to depression and drinking, right? It's not just when a person is depressed, it becomes or has a mental imbalance, it becomes also a threat to other human beings. Lithium is a proven mood stabilizer. This is exactly what it does. And that's probably how it reduces the crime and the suicide rate. So this suggests that lithium supplementation would be more likely to be a public health strategy than a supplement individual would take, unless, of course, if somebody is struggling with depression or psychological issues, in which case medical consultation is essential. We do not cover these people here. Another important thing is I won't touch lithium for psychiatric issues, bipolar, etc., or higher doses. We only focus on living longer, having a healthy life, and protecting the brain from aging. Still, we are not throwing out the possibility that lithium has direct longevity effects, maybe specifically in the brain, maybe Alzheimer's. We are not ruling that at all. In fact, in Japan, they tried to see if they could isolate the suicide rates from lithium, and the researchers concluded that lithium seems to have longevity effects. But I don't buy this analysis so quickly, because it's not just suicide. I mean, better mental health could be translated to less homicide, less depression, accidental death. Depressed people drink more. Depression and loneliness in general, they kill human beings even if they don't do anything to anybody else. Being happy actually is going to make you live longer. So maybe lithium, if it's going to make you happy, there is no doubt you're going to live longer because of the happiness aspect. If lithium truly extended lifespan by slowing down aging, we would expect longevity gains in lab animals giving low-dose lithium. However, that has not been shown in mammals. Why this is important to think about it? Because if you're already taking a bunch of supplements, this perspective matters. Meaning that we have so many other supplements that have strong data, and lithium may not be worth taking as another pill if your goal is targeting aging. Just one more thing to take and remember taking, while you have so many other good options. What's the mechanism which it could target aging, maybe in the brain, in the kidneys? So there is an enzyme that is common throughout the entire body, including the brain and in the kidneys. It's actually an enzyme group. It's called the JSK3, and there are different types of enzymes, alpha, beta. Enzyme, essentially, they like machines in the cell, or sometimes in the blood, and they accelerate different processes inside the cell, usually lead to an end result that could affect longevity. Sometimes it has no effect. And JSK3 seems to have an effect on longevity because it affects autophagy. JSK3 specifically restrains autophagy partly by inhibiting a mechanism. So this enzyme prevents autophagy from becoming active. Then lithium comes and it inhibits this JSK3 alpha and beta. They are associated with neurological disease, which is important because as we age over 60, 65, we have more neurological diseases, and also because it has an effect on autophagy. That could be any age. In other words, if by targeting JSK I can activate autophagy throughout the entire body, especially the brain, it would make me think more about lithium for longevity. This mechanism I explained alone can give you the confidence to take lithium. But if you decide to take lithium, you need to be very careful with the dose, and possibly consider cycling it, as I'm going to explain in a second. Lithium in lower doses seems to inhibit it just in the right amount, not too much and not too little. In fact, in some studies, they show that if you give too much lithium, you actually kill the animal faster. So it could be what lithium does, it inhibits too much the GSK3, and now you have a side effect. It is likely that lithium had a positive effect on this enzyme in the brain and in the kidneys, although it's hard for me to know at what age should we take it, what dose, because if there is a longevity benefit, it's going to be through this enzyme. But this enzyme does a lot of things, and I want to know not just how it affects autophagy, how it affects other things in the brain. What's the meaning of that? It means that when we speak about the doses, we want to be spot on. If we want to feel safe, we're just going to imitate the doses in the water supply, because we have a lot of human data to show that it's either negligible or prevent mortality. So we are speaking about 0.05 milligrams to 0.3 milligrams per day in the water supply that achieve the results I mentioned. But when you go to higher doses, you should be worried about the side effects of inhibiting too much this enzyme. I do not recommend anyone to take anything, but if I decide to take that, I probably would cycle it. Why? Because if I interfere with this enzyme, I want to give this enzyme like maybe a few days off the lithium. So maybe I could get the autophagy, get rid of the junk from the brain, maybe improve my mood, but then if you give it a few days off to do the other things lithium inhibited its function. Make sense? So in other words, when you take time off lithium, you possibly give the enzyme some time off to do other things that maybe lithium interferes with it. So I view that as a defensive approach instead of taking it every single day. So if you want to embark on lithium supplement, what's the perfect dose that combines both the safety and the potency? So we know from the human studies, based on what appears in water naturally, that 0.3 milligram is safe and effective. And we know that too much of lithium can cause a negative effect, including actually accelerating death in animals. From the studies I have read in animals, higher doses could be as little as 3 to 5 times the low dose that reverses this effect. You don't need to go to 10 or 20 times. So to compare, 1 milligram of lithium that Brian Johnson is already taking today is already about 3 times the amount found in water supply that has been proven effective in humans. So I would go a bit lower if I can, by the cycling method. Cycling will reduce the effect of the average dose. So if you take 2 days off, you will reduce the effective dose of this 1 milligrams to 0.7 milligrams, about double the water level in Texas water supply in the highest county. To me, this sounds more safe and effective, taking into account the lack of data about the correct dose, especially that we are not absolutely sure the effect on long-term mortality if you take this supplement for many, many, many years. So this is my bottom line. The human data suggests that lithium main benefit is reducing preventable deaths, suicide, rather than just slowing their biological aging. The evidence for lithium at this point of lifespan extension and the inability to pinpoint the dose makes me delay taking it. This aligns with the idea that lithium impact in human population is not through anti-aging biology, but through reducing psychiatric risk factors for early death. Studying lithium makes me think about more is contacting the local politician and to disperse low dose lithium in the water supply to protect me from violent young men, than actually reducing my individual aging rate. And if the government has low budget, we'll simply replace the fluoride, which has been shown to reduce children IQ, which is a thyroid toxin. It's a bone toxin, supposedly for teeth benefits, which has very weak data. They could replace that with naturally occurring lithium in the drinking water. Also, the lithium in the water supply in the population could maybe prevent the need of psychiatric drugs for children that can change the brain chemistry. Also, the brain chemistry is adults. And these drugs possibly could be spared by naturally occurring lithium and, of course, good nutrition for mood stability. And the evidence for that, unlike in longevity, is quite strong. From a society level, the evidence of lithium for reducing crime is quite strong, especially that it seems to be safe in those levels. And it's natural. Humans have been exposed to the lithium in water for who knows how long. Of course, people with tendency towards depression or chemical imbalances may consider consulting their doctor for lithium supplementation. I would say the data on neurological protection is stronger, but I need to again, to pick exact dose. I'm going to continue to track that. I'm going to see if at some point more mammal studies. And this is it. This is the story of lithium. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful, tasty, nourishing day.